Jim. How are you?
Michael, we're the outcasts.
Yep, we can kick the curb, brother.
Nice. That's it. Good. Go bump elbows or
So yeah, we could wave from afar. How about that?
That's fine, thank you. Mark, are you ready?
I am ready. Yes.
Okay. So I'm not. Before we start the meeting this evening, I have a letter from Russ Skogstad that I need to read to you all. It is my understanding that Mr. Schwindeman, who is contracted by the city, is going to update council on its undertakings on behalf of the city with regard to the city employees' health insurance, so as to avoid triggering the requirements of the Open Meetings Act, and so council members are not in violation, and in an abundance of caution, I would ask that council be instructed to not talk with each other about the health insurance information during this session, as health insurance is an issue that could be brought up in the future and is part of our budget process. As I understand it, council is just receiving information from Mr. Schwindeman and are not deliberating at this session. I would ask the mayor to instruct council that they are not to discuss with each other at this session any of the information that they learned from Mr. Schwindeman. They may ask him or Amy Roberts questions to clarify the information, but should not discuss any of the information with each other at this time, so the information session does not become a meeting. I base my opinion on the reading of the attached statute and OMA 2019-03. A quorum of the commission may meet outside of a public meeting to discuss logical matters such as creating and publishing agendas. To discuss logistical matters such as creating and publishing agendas and minutes, and to receive budget information from staff. A quorum may not meet outside of a public meeting to discuss staff job duties, staff performance, appropriate office conduct, or approving expenditures. The commission may discuss specific personnel matters such as employee performance in executive session. So, does everyone understand that you are welcome to ask Mark any questions that you want? But if you have any questions that you want to discuss with the other members of council, we will have to take that up later this evening when we go into our budget discussion. Okay? All right. Having said that, Mark Schwindeman is with us this evening. Mark is our insurance specialist. And so, Mark, if you would take us through the packet that you've prepared.
Certainly. Thank you, Mayor Rapp. First of all, let me introduce Caitlin Kidd, who's the account executive from the Schwindeman Agency for the city of Vienna. So it's nice to be in front of everyone again. I think it was 12 short months ago that we were talking about health insurance here in council chambers previously. The Schwindeman Agency, just as a reminder, is an independent firm. We handle all lines of insurance and financial services, but have a particular core competency in the employee benefits area. We work with about 300 employers for health insurance benefits, both in West Virginia, Ohio, actually in Kentucky and Pennsylvania as well. Most of our business is in the Wood County, Washington County, Ohio, Wood County, West Virginia, Washington County, Ohio area. We're very familiar with the carriers and the plans that operate in both states. Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield is your incumbent insurance company, is a major insurance carrier in the state of West Virginia. Each year, we gather underwriting information and go out to the marketplace to find what we believe is best value for our clients, obviously City of Vienna included in that. And so this evening, I'm going to report out what the findings of those have been, and then certainly entertain any questions that anyone has. The first part of the packet that we handed out talks about the total compensation model. We use this a lot in in consulting with our employers. City of Vienna, I believe, follows this pretty effectively as well. Looking any one of the three pillars of salary, health and welfare benefits, and retirement compensation in isolation, you can draw different conclusions, and often is somewhat, I won't say undesirable, but it's somewhat difficult to come up with the best conclusion when you look at isolation. We think these three items should be taken into consideration in tandem or in concert. The three components are interrelated, should not be viewed in isolation. As I mentioned, many employers, including the City of Vienna, take all three components into consideration when making health and welfare benefit decisions. And we just put a brief example out here of how, in isolation, looking at how, gee, maybe we'll just increase a benefit out of pocket to employees because that reduces premium. Well, for example, increasing the health insurance out of pocket cost by $1,000 is in effect reducing the take-home pay of an employee earning $17 an hour. And I believe that's somewhat in the ballpark of what the average wage is here at the City of Vienna. Increasing both by 3.5%. So each $1,000 is a 3.5% reduction in take-home pay. Not necessarily saying you should not consider that, but just that's the cause and effect of doing something such as that. Often employers will look at increasing both out-of-pocket expense and then the premium contribution per paycheck, which has a doubling of that effect and actually affects the take-home pay more dramatically. We obviously recognize that healthcare costs are increasing. Correspondingly then, health insurance premiums increase. So what we typically find is employers take a balance. We say we cannot just take on entire cost increases ourselves. Perhaps we need to share that with plan participants. So we talk through that. We figure out what makes the most sense for each one of our individual employers. And each employer has really their own philosophy on the total compensation package, depending on whether or not they want to heavily weigh compensation as compared to benefits, moderate those two, or weigh and higher benefits at sometimes the expense of compensation. So it just depends on the philosophy of the employer group that we're working with at that time. Questions on the philosophy as we start out? Hearing none, let's go into some of the detail, if we could, for the health insurance. Highmark Blue Cross and Blue Shield, as I mentioned, is your incumbent carrier. This year was a pretty difficult year from a claims to premium standpoint. During the 12-month experience period, the City of Vienna participants experienced about $1,586,000 worth of claims, as compared to premiums paid in of $1,395,000. So the loss ratio claims to premium was about 114%. Desirable loss ratios are in the 80 to 85% range, depending on the size of the group. 100-plus employee group would be closer to 85%. Less than 100 employees would be closer to the 80%. The other 20% would be administrative costs for the insurance company, reinsurance premiums, and those types of things. So another way to put this is City of Vienna took out quite a bit more money out of the bucket this year than put into the bucket for the cost of claims. Last year, we had a 10-year average loss ratio that Highmark provided for us for the City of Vienna. I don't expect you to recall this, but the 10-year average was 91%. So still above the desired, but reasonable. And we think as a result of that, seemed to be over a long time period, pretty favorable treatment of the city with regards to the premiums that were being charged. So with that, the original renewal that came out of Highmark was a 15% rate increase. Now to put that into proper perspective, the inflation trend, the expected increase, just based on the performance of the Highmark book of business, is roughly 9% this year. So if you put that into proper consideration, since you performed a little worse than what was anticipated, you had a higher increase out of the gate than what the average would have been. So through discussions, and actually Highmark came forth with this, we asked them to reconsider the rate renewal. They did, and reduced it to a 9% rate increase, which is essentially their inflation trend for this year. So we think that was a very reasonable move on Highmark's part, and we'll see that play out based on what the other carriers' responses were in the marketplace. Item number 3, Highmark was asked for a further review of the claims experience and for additional reduction. The challenge there was that the loss ratio actually went up even higher. When another running 12 months was looked at for the claims experience as compared to premium, it actually had worsened to over 120%. So Highmark came back and said, we just can't see going below our average inflationary trend increase. So for the existing plan design, that's where it's settled in at. Not necessarily that you should remember this as well, but last year, the actual final renewal for the same plan design that you currently have was a 5% reduction. Started at about 3%, first revision was 0%, and then the final was a 5% rate reduction. So not necessarily trying to justify this, but that was what ended up last year. We do have plan design alternatives. There's a plethora of plan design alternatives. We have a few to review tonight. We'll give you some suggestions. We'll give you a recommendation, actually, what makes some sense from our perspective for your consideration. Questions so far?
Mark, I'm sorry, did you bring a bottle of water with you?
I did not, but sure, if you don't mind, Amy, that'd be great. Thanks.
I told you I would have that for you, and I realized that I forgot to put
That's-
that out there.
That's
So
quite all right. That's quite
I
all
don't
right.
want you, you're going to talk for quite a while, so let us get you that.
Appreciate that. So in 2B, let's talk a little bit about the 5 other carriers that we asked for proposals. And let me describe how this actually works in the size marketplace that City of Vienna is in. It's based on number of employees participating in the plan. So at 51 to 100 employees, which you fall in, I believe, right around 80 employees, right around that size, there's not claims experience provided. In the state of West Virginia, as in the state of Ohio, carriers do not need to provide claims experience in order to do quoting, which would be detailed experience, high claimant information, that type of thing. As a result of that, what we do then is go through a process where we gather medical information from each of the employees and dependents in a process. It's actually thanks a lot, Amy. The system's name is FormFire. I'm not sure why it's called FormFire, but it is. It's a secure system, and employees fill out information concerning their health conditions, medications, and what have you. That information is transmitted to us electronically, securely, and then we shoot it out to the carriers electronically and securely so that the underwriters can look at the overall risk for any employer group. So that's the process that's utilized, and I commend the City of Vienna because it's a time-consuming process, updating that every year, but I can tell you that the employees at the City of Vienna, we wish everyone reacted as they do here. It's like herding cats and getting the information together, but you all do a great job of that. So we gathered the information, and we could see from the information why your loss ratio was where it was this year. There's unfortunately, some ongoing conditions at the City of Vienna. Obviously, we're not going to talk about those this evening. When the carriers actually quoted, we had the responses, as you see in 1, 2, and 3 under 2B. And pardon me for just a moment. As similar to last year, Cigna was the most competitive alternative carrier. For the similar plan design that you have in place, Cigna quoted a 12.41% rate increase. Doesn't match exactly, primarily because in each state, whether it be West Virginia or Ohio, carriers have to file their plan design options with the State Department of Insurance. So when we ask a carrier to quote, we ask that carrier to quote initially the plan design that most closely resembles the one that's in effect with the incumbent carrier. That rate increase, or that rate, was 12.41% higher. Information concerning the details provided in what some of the follow-up detail that we provided for you all this evening. Health Plan, the carrier that's domiciled in Wheeling, quoted a similar plan design at plus 23%. And then Aetna, Benetcon, and United Healthcare all came back and said we cannot be competitive with the information, with our pricing based on the risk that we're underwriting for the City of Vienna. So we had declines from those 3 particular carriers. One thing we do want to note is the health insurance provider fee. That's an Affordable Care Act tax that was put in place to tax insurance companies on their fully insured plan market share to help finance the Affordable Care Act. For the City of Vienna's renewal, that amounted to 2.73% of the premium. So what the insurance company does is they just simply pass that through to all of their clients, and the clients pay that in the form of a premium. The good news with regards to that is the health insurance provider fee goes away for the 2021 renewal, not the 20 renewal, the 2021 renewal. That's been repealed. So, again, questions so far. This is just the general information that we're going through. So 2C, I'd like to have you reference the the table that Caitlin and her team put together, the Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield and HRA summary table. And you might want to pull out beside that the spreadsheet that we call it's the Group Health Insurance Market Study. It's actually not just a one spreadsheet, it's a stapled together document. So to start out, let me describe the health insurance plan design because there's two component parts. There's the insurance policy with Highmark Blue Cross and Blue Shield. It is a high deductible policy, $4,000 deductible per individual, $8,000 per family. There's some copays for office visits, urgent care, emergency room care, and prescription drugs. But it is a high deductible health insurance plan. Coupled with that is a program called a health reimbursement arrangement, or an HRA. And that's really kind of a mini self-funded plan. We found this combination to be very effective as compared to insuring all of the benefit from the deductible forward. So the city actually reimburses employees for a certain portion of the deductible they satisfy throughout the year. And again, that combination has historically provided lesser costs than when we look at just fully insuring that full benefit with the insurance company. We started this here at the City of Vienna in 2013 and have continued this methodology going forward. Now, we've had some plan design tweaks over the years, but continued that methodology for the financing of the insurance since 2013. So we're going to talk about that construct as we go forward. If we look at the Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield and HRA summary table, if I may, I'll walk us through that. If you look across the top in kind of the light green shaded area, it will be the options. The options will correspond. Commissioner?
Would you be able to put this on the document?
Sure.
So you can kind of point us to
Perfect.
what section of the document we're looking at?
Sure. So the document that I'm referring to right now, if we look at, we're going to look across the top and then down through each one of the categories. Can everyone hear me okay if I move over a little bit? Thanks. So the option column will reference the actual option that's highlighted in the group health insurance market study. The market study goes into much more detail describing each one of those options. It gets into the copay structure, gets into the individual premium structure, and what have you. Next to that is the PPO in-network plan design. It's a brief description of that. Once again, it's more detailed description in the health insurance market study that we put together. Next to that is the health reimbursement arrangement, how that actually works, and I'll describe that for each one of the options. Then the combination of the two will be the next column over in the major medical employee out-of-pocket expense for network, and that's actually the major medical employee out-of-pocket expense associated with the plan once those two work in concert together. Again, I'll explain that in a moment. The annual insurance premium is based on the current contract counts that you have. Percent change from current, how much of an increase actually is it from the percentage change, or excuse me, from the previous plan year, which would be the one that we're in right now, 7/1/19 through 6/30/20. The estimated annual HRA expense. The reason that is estimated is we're never quite sure how many folks are going to be utilizing the insurance, so consequently we don't know what that reimbursement is going to look like. From past years, we can pretty much hone in on that. We talk with Amy concerning it for a budget figure based on the plan design that you select and the HRA plan design that you select. Then estimated total cost would simply be the annual premium plus the estimated annual HRA, and then the total cost percentage. What is not on here is the breakout for the employee-employer contribution schedule. This is total annual premium, which would include both the employer portion of the contribution and the employee. And obviously would break that out when it comes time to do that for contribution structure and what have you. Question on the construct as to how this is set up. Okay? So if we look at the current plan and we'll go across that row, the current plan's in place, as I mentioned, from 7/1/19 to 6/30/2020. The deductible for the major medical, and by the way, there's three component parts of a health insurance policy. One is major medical for surgeries, inpatient hospital stays, those types of things. There's also co-pays for office visits, primary care, specialty care, urgent care, ER. Then the third category would be prescription drug reimbursements. And there's usually typically co-pay structures with those. Our group health insurance market study spells those out specifically as to what those co-pay structures are. Again, we just highlight this to reference what the plan design actually is. So this is the existing plan, the incumbent plan. So for major medical expenses, if someone goes into the hospital, for example, and it's a $20,000 bill, this particular policy would have a deductible of $4,000, which without the HRA would be the employee's responsibility to pay. Once the deductible is satisfied on an in-network basis, there's network, non-network. Most all the providers that you all use are in-network, especially here locally. Once the deductible is satisfied, the plan takes over at 100%. There's no co-insurance that we call in place. So that's why you see the zero. Looks like coins. That's our abbreviation for co-insurance. That's the major medical portion. So once someone satisfies or enters into their deductible, that's when the HRA kicks in, the health reimbursement arrangement. And so the way that works is the next column, and let's assume in my example that I gave the $20,000 bill, the employee has a $4,000 responsibility, as indicated by the deductible in the health insurance policy. The HRA works like this. The employee would be responsible to pay the first $250 of that deductible. The employer, City of Vienna, would reimburse the employee the next $2,750, and then the employee would be responsible for the final $1,000. So effectively then, if we look to the next column over, under the major medical employee in-network out-of-pocket expense, the employee's total out-of-pocket for that example that I just gave was the $250 on the front end of the HRA and $1,000 on the back end, or $1,250. There can be 2 deductibles per family. However, any one person in the family would only have the one deductible. So if someone has a family contract, then the individual could, or that particular employee could have a maximum of $2,500 out of pocket once the HRA is adjudicated. Everyone comfortable with that explanation?
I got a question. So how are these numbers come up with in the HRA, the 250, 2750? Is that what you come up with, or how are those numbers
Sure.
circulated?
Commissioner Elam, what's happened in the past is several years ago, well, going back to 2013, the plan design was a fully insured plan design that had a $250 deductible and then an 80-20 component so that the individual's out-of-pocket in total was $1,250. So we were able to save quite a bit of money. The first iteration of this was going to a $3,000 deductible in constructing back in 2013-14, in constructing the HRA to mirror what was in place previously. And so what we've done, we've kept that similar construct. There's flexibility with the HRA, so we could really do the HRA at whatever the city's desire would be, and you'll see some examples of that here in just a moment. So, but that's how it's been. It's been historically that way. It doesn't necessarily have to be that going forward.
And that would affect the cost of the whole plan if
Yes.
we mess with those numbers in.
Absolutely, that's correct. That's correct. Sure. So yes, the answer to your question is correct. So we can model really about anything that the city would like to see. We'll give you what we think makes a good recommendation, which is a change this year to offset some of the increase in cost, and that's something that you all can consider. But if you came back to us and say model something differently, we can do that within reason. It just depends on what that looks like.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Mark, let me interrupt you for a moment, please.
Sure.
So I'm monitoring the live stream, if you all are going to ask a question, I need to give you that portable mic. I mean, they can hear Mark perfectly clear, but they said that they couldn't hear Jim's question and they couldn't hear you. So, I mean, you ask any questions you want, but if you don't mind.
I know he can catch.
Okay, so if you'll give that to Mike, if someone else has a question, we'll pass it.
And I can restate the question too.
No, that's okay, Mark. Go ahead.
Okay. So, do you want me to restate and respond to that, or are we good?
No, we're good.
Okay, great. Thank you. Next column over, the annual insurance premium. The annual insurance premium this is a static number based on your existing contract counts, how many single employees you have on the plan, how many employee spouses, how many employed children in full families. That number will fluctuate throughout the year, so this isn't this number is a good estimate of what your annual premium actually is with the current rate structure, assuming that your contract counts would not have changed throughout the year. That number is $1,394,835. Obviously, no percent change from current because that is the current pricing. The next column over is the estimated annual HRA. So that's the health reimbursement arrangement. The reason it's estimated is what we took was the actual numbers from 7/1/18 through 6/30/19 because we haven't completed this year yet. And those are tracking, your numbers this year are tracking pretty close to that annualized cost. And the reason that can fluctuate once again is we're not sure what your claims utilization and benefit utilization is going to look like to see how many people need or will be offered be eligible for reimbursement under that deductible. By the way, that $165,312 includes, as you'll see in the footnote at the bottom, footnote number 2, includes the West Banco health reimbursement administrative fees, which are $5.25 a month per employee, which totals $4,914. You also note beside that, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this, you may want to consider this year if you in your plan design construction in administration is moving that HRA administration to Highmark Blue Cross and Blue Shield. We looked at that last year for you, and quite frankly, Highmark came back to us and said, we're not quite ready yet, based on how they were going to adjudicate the claims and how it would work. The reporting wasn't something that we were really comfortable with. This year, we think it is. We haven't implemented one yet. We're talking on a few of our plans about moving that administration. The reason that's attractive, for one reason, it removes the fee. Highmark will administer the health reimbursement arrangement with no fee as compared to the $5.25. And that saves roughly $5,000 in annual expense. So, yes?
Probably just restate this.
Mike.
Push the button on the bottom, Amy.
I understand.
Jim, is the green light on?
Yes.
All right.
Okay. All right, so I understand when you're talking about the estimated annual HRA, because that can fluctuate depending on what our employees use, correct?
Correct.
But you mentioned the annual insurance premium was static, but then you said that number can fluctuate. I didn't understand how
Yeah. Thanks.
that works.
Let me respond to that. Probably didn't construct that explanation very well. So when I say static, let me rephrase that. We took a snapshot of your employee participation and assumed that employee participation stayed consistent throughout the year to come up with the $1,394,000. In truth, the participation employees on the plan will fluctuate throughout the year. That's why that number can be different. Got it. Thank you. So the total estimated cost, and the reason it's estimated, is the premium plus the HRA, which we really don't know until after the plan year, for all the expenses to come in, is today $1,560,000, 7/1/19 through 6/30/20. So let me stop there a moment and respond to any questions with regards to the layout, and if there's any specific questions regarding the existing plan design. Be happy to entertain those. If not, I'll keep going. So the next row is the renewal. Same plan design that you have in effect right now. So I won't repeat what I just went through with regards to the PPO in-network, HRA, major medical in-network out expense. What this is reflecting, when you go over to the annual insurance premium column, is the 9% increase. It's going from $1,394,000, it being the annual premium, assuming the contract counts stayed the same, is going to $1,520,374, reflective of the 9% increase that was the final rate increase that Highmark settled on for this plan design. If indeed the HRA stays the same, based on our anticipated estimate, at $165,312, the total cost goes to $1,685,686, or an increase in total of just slightly over 8%. Okay? Moving down to option 1, which we think you may want to have some high consideration for this. We just think it makes some sense from plan designs that we're seeing out there. What we looked at doing here was increasing the deductible for the insurance policy, what you pay Highmark, Blue Cross, and Blue Shield. Just like with auto insurance, if you have collision coverage and you increase the deductible, the premium comes down. The plan's taking more exposure. The city of Vienna is taking on more risk with regards to that, or I should say the individual participants taking on more risk, because the deductible in this example goes from $4,000 to $5,000 a year. So Commissioner Elam, back to your question as concerning the HRA and the construct. The city council can say, gee, let's construct this HRA, whatever makes sense for what you want to accomplish with your employees. Suggestion was, why don't we look at a 500, if we look at the option 1, let me walk us through specifically this. Option 1, next column over, Highmark PPO plan design. Deductible on the major medical goes to $5,000, $10,000. All the copays stay the same. Office visit copays, urgent care, emergency room, prescription drug stay the same. The only change in this is the deductible going to $5,000, $10,000. The construct of the HRA that's in this example would be the employee would be responsible for the first $500. The employer, City of Vienna, would be responsible for reimbursing the next $3,000, and then the employee would be responsible on the back end for $1,500. So what that in effect does for those utilizing the major medical plan, inpatient hospital stays, surgeries, those types of things, the out-of-pocket cost goes to $2,000 per individual and $4,000 per family, which, as I mentioned at the outset, what employers sometimes will settle on is we can't take on the full increase as the employer, but we don't want to pass the entire increase on by increasing the deductibles and out-of-pockets so high that it gets it down to no increase. So let's share in that. So that's effectively what this design does. So if we look going across there, the premium with Highmark for the $5,000 deductible is $1,425,756, or a 2.22% increase from current. So the savings is roughly, if I do the math right, what is that? Actually, it's $95,000 if I did the math quickly right. If this HRA, based on your utilization, let's think about this for just a moment. We increased the deductible, we changed the HRA. So our staff went back and looked at your reports on your health reimbursement arrangement. We think if you increased, and really what we're doing is we're repositioning the employer's share slightly, but we're increasing it slightly from $2,750, if you look just above that in renewal under the HRA column where my finger is, and look right below that to $3,000. So we're increasing the city's responsibility by $250, but we've shifted it by $250 because the employee's now responsible for the first $500. Our estimate of the increase in HRA reimbursements as a result of doing that is roughly $15,000. So we say, okay, the HRA, if we go to the estimated annual HRA column, you'll notice that between the renewal, second row down of $165,312, this projected option 1 HRA reimbursement is $179,914. And again, once again, that includes the admin fees for West Banco, which if you remove those, is about a $5,000 reduction. Commissioner Leach?
So that'd be a net reduction of about $80,000.
Jim?
Yeah.
You can repeat
Yeah, so the question from Commissioner Leach was, that would be, roughly be a net reduction of about $80,000 from the renewal, and that is correct. If you look at the total estimated cost column, the $1,605,670 is compared to the $1,685,000 right above that. So it effectively takes your overall increase to just slightly below 3%. One way to look at that, I suppose, we can't do anything about it this year, is if we didn't have the health insurance processing fee, that tax of 2.7%, you'd have no increase this year if you implemented this type of plan design. Not necessarily saying that's where you should go, but based on what we're seeing, the out-of-pockets for the employees, quite honestly, is in line with what we're seeing. And so the design would not be out of question with regards to average plan designs that are out there. Options 2, 3, and 4 are different configurations. For example, option 2, same deductible. If we look at option 2 under the Highmark PPO in network, same deductible, $4,000, $8,000. But this plan design introduces, after the deductible, a 20% coinsurance. So it increases the employee out-of-pocket expense considerably. And if you look to the column all the way over on the right-hand side, the employee's out-of-pocket expense in this example, if we kept the HRA the same as it is now, would go all the way up to $3,250 and $6,500. Pretty significant increase from where you are. Doesn't say that it can't be done or shouldn't be done, but it would be a pretty significant increase. What we were doing here is looking to, can we get close to zero or maybe even a reduction? That gives us about a 2.77% reduction. The next one gives us, it has a 10% coinsurance, gives us a roughly about a 1% reduction, but it increases the employee out-of-pocket expense considerably as well. Then option 4 keeps the same deductibles, as you notice right here with my fingers, same deductibles, no coinsurance, but we pretty considerably changed the copay structure, especially with the mail order prescription drug. And I'll just give you our philosophy on that, if that's okay. The majority of the utilization of any health insurance plan, whether it's here or whether it's another employer, is going to be office visits, it's going to be urgent care visits, and it's going to be prescription drug. So if we had our druthers and we were looking to, gee, what's the best use of the plan design, would be as compared maybe to option 1 to option 4, which essentially gives us the same result, we would lean towards option 1 in that discussion because it has less impact on all the employees and affects those that unfortunately have to use the major medical expense. Mr. Elam?
That's power. It's on.
Push the button in the bottom right, the green light will turn on.
Green light's on the side.
There we go. Okay, so with these, I don't know how, with my employer, we always have a couple options. Is it not an option for us as a city, instead of having one blanket coverage, to have the employees have a couple options for them to choose which plan best meets their family's needs?
The answer to that question is yes, you can. The way we've actually thought about that at this renewal, with regards to having the high deductible health plan, what we would suggest doing then is to have 2 options with the health reimbursement arrangement. For example, we might have a high option that maybe mirrors what you have today, a $250 deductible, $1,250 out of pocket, and then we have a lower option that has a higher deductible, higher out-of-pocket expense, which would be a lesser charge to the employee if we construct it that way. But it would be with regards to the HRA configuration. Another example that we could put together is a health savings account arrangement. I mean, that's something that's somewhat popular with employers as well. From a cost effectiveness standpoint, we believe the high deductible health plan and then the configuration of the HRA, whether it's one plan or if you offer a couple, makes the most sense. We believe in, quite frankly, we believe in paying less premium to the insurance company and self-funding a part of that within reason, based on the size of the group. When I say self-funding a portion, that's the HRA, because what we have found is the combination of the latter, the health insurance plan, and the HRA, in every instance has cost our employers less money than fully insuring that benefit with the insurance carrier. But to answer your question, Commissioner, yes, or Councilman, I keep saying
That's all right.
Commissioner, do I say that all along?
That's all right.
I'm
So
in-
that's Randy, that's something we've never done as a city, have we? As long as you've been here, having the choices of what they can choose from as far as plans. I mean,
I can't answer you, Mike, I'm
oh
sorry.
yeah. Well, you've had it forever, so yeah.
You can ask me, no.
We've never done. Okay, all right. I don't know why. Just
Thank
okay.
you.
Don't want chain of command.
Yeah, so since we've been involved, there's only been the one plan design. Councilman Elam. Yeah, I'll be in the right jurisdiction here shortly. Let me stop for a moment and just let you reflect on what I just commented on and consider questions. And I'm happy to go through our detail of our individual spreadsheets if you'd like. We thought it'd be easier to walk through this with a summary. Any questions from anyone, comments? Yes.
In option 1, 2, 3, and 4, or I guess 2, 3, and 4, you have initials OV, UC, ER, and RX.
Mhm.
RX will be prescription,
Correct.
ER will be emergency room.
Correct.
What's the other two?
UC is urgent care for urgent care facilities, and then office visits for primary care, ER's emergency room.
Okay.
So those are the three copay categories, and then the fourth would be the prescription drug.
So what you're saying right now, if we renew our current plan, it was going to go up 15%, but it was negotiated and it only went up 9%, right?
That is correct.
And then these others are increases in copay deductibles and office visits and so forth like that, right?
Excellent summary. That's correct.
Okay, thank
That's
you.
correct. Other questions? I'll keep going if there's not. I'd be happy to entertain them, entertain questions as we go through this. Actually, we'll be shifting away from the health insurance and moving into the other benefits, and we'll just have a brief description of those. Let me, if you go back to the employee benefit discussion handout and flip the page to page 2 of that. So we're finished with the health insurance portion. Item number 2, the HRA administration options. It's not unusual for the insurance company that has the insurance plan to offer the administration of the health reimbursement arrangement, or HRA, without a charge, without an administration charge. If that's separated, if we think through this appropriately, if that's separated as it has been in the past, I won't say by necessity, but by our recommendation, quite frankly, based on Highmark's positioning with that administration, the administrative company has to charge a fee in order to cover their costs and make a profit. So WesBanco, we think, has done a very nice job. It's not that we're disgruntled with the job that they've been doing. It's for consideration that if you take that in-house with Highmark, that the fees would be, there'd be no fee structure for the HRA administration. Another advantage is Highmark auto adjudicates the claim behind the scenes. Right now, it's, when I say that is, let's say the hospital sends the $20,000 bill from my example to Highmark for payment. Highmark looks at the plan of insurance and says you've got a $4,000 deductible, Councilman Leach. It's your responsibility. Highmark then sends that explanation of benefits electronically to WesBanco. WesBanco administers it, so there's some time elapsed in there. With regards to Highmark doing the processing, it's not necessarily that there's no time elapsed, but it's much shorter. They send it in-house. The other advantage is if the employees actually utilize the Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield internet, their system, their website, their portal, they can actually see the balances, their explanation of benefits with the insurance plan, can see where they stand with regards to the health reimbursement arrangement. And actually, if you move your flexible spending account there, which may be a consideration, they would also see that. They can see all 3 spending accounts or insurance accounts. For consideration, nothing wrong with what you're doing right now. It's just that Highmark tells us, and we've actually had meetings with them, that they're ready for the administration. and are comfortable with it. They've tested it. They've had employers on it for a while. We don't have that knowledge to tell you that, yes, yeah, we're 100% behind that. I think we will be once we have some employers move to the HRA administration there. You would have, just as a brief aside, if you left West Banco at the end of June, you would still have fees for 3 months for what we call the run out of claims, meaning that claims that were incurred in May and June before your actual plan ends, that don't get paid until July or August or September. The administration of that would still be with West Banco until that run out is done. So the fee structure would be there. So you have about 9 months worth of saving those fees the first year if you'd move that administration to Highmark. Question on that? And again, we can configure that HRA reimbursement, whatever makes sense. It doesn't have to be what we've suggested necessarily in these examples, but we can do a dual option effectively with that as well. Item number 3, flexible spending account. Highmark is willing to administer that at no fee as well. And I'm going to look to Amy just a moment. Task is doing that, and I believe the fee is roughly, Stephanie said it's it's $5 per employee per month, I think. And I think you have 50-some employees participating in the flexible spending account.
I believe it was around $4,000.
Total cost? Thanks, Caitlin. Thank you. Another opportunity, if you wanted to move the administration of the flexible spending account to Highmark as well. So the total savings is roughly $9,000 in admin fees, if you're comfortable doing that.
Mark, if I can interrupt you for a moment.
Sure.
One of the things that we're going to try to do is explain in more detail with our employees the advantage of the flexible spending account. Those are pre-tax dollars. So every dollar that you invest actually gets you more money than what you actually put in the plan. So it's another cost savings that our employees can enjoy.
Absolutely. Makes perfect sense. What we've learned is when we do our employee meetings, we have a young man in our office that manages our wellness programs, Dr. Darren Swartz. He's creating animated videos that resonate real well that you can send out to the employees that talk about the advantages of the flexible spending accounts, why it makes sense. Actually, Caitlin's our star in most of them. She's the animated character in voiceover. Actually, Mayor Rapp, you could be our animated character.
No, thank you.
Or any one of our councilmen. So anyhow, to answer your questions, yes, education and utilizing these spending accounts save the employees money, and it just makes sense if they're comfortable using them. It makes a lot of sense. Item number 4, items 4, 5, and 6, I'm going to go through those relatively quickly. The dental insurance, we have, actually Highmark's requesting a 7.4% increase. That total premium would be $51,594 based on the current participation in your dental. We have, quite frankly, 3 other carriers that are a little less expensive. What we're doing right now is comparing the networks for the dentist, who's in, who's out, looking at the structure, the copay or the percentages paid for preventive care, all that. It's interesting, all dental plans include different things in the basic and major expenses, so we're doing a detailed comparison. Suggestion for budget purposes is budget for the renewal is, and we think we probably can get Highmark down a little bit off that renewal, or if you're comfortable doing that, and then let us do the work and come back and talk about what makes the most sense and the best benefit for the participants. Nothing wrong with the plan you have now. It's just competition-wise, we see a little bit better pricing there. Vision insurance, the rates with Davis Vision are actually guaranteed through June 30th. The annual premium for everyone on the plan, vision insurance is not expensive, is $15,015. There are 3 other carriers. Vision Service Plan is the carrier that you used to have before you moved to Davis Vision. And you may or may not recall this, the decision to make the move with the dental and the vision, I think that would have been 3 years ago, if I recall properly, was that in that move, Highmark, as an incentive, gave a reduction of the health insurance premium for that one particular year. So it made sense. The plan designs looked pretty good, as comparably speaking to what you had in place. The networks of dentists and things matched pretty well. So we're out 3 years from that, so it was time to take a look to see what makes the most sense. And we in conjunction with just consideration, make them back and say, you might want to consider making a change, save a few dollars with this plan, if it doesn't interrupt the service or the providers with the employees. Okay? The ancillary benefits, that would be the life insurance, the short-term disability, long-term disability, and voluntary life. Those rates are guaranteed through June 30th, 2021. We've estimated the annual premiums for each of those. They will fluctuate based on compensation for disability and number and the participants and total volume of compensation. Item D, the voluntary life. You have 18 people that have picked up additional life insurance. What we've found is that about the only place now that employees get the opportunity to purchase life insurance is through their employer programs. There are some agents out there calling on people, but not nearly as many as there used to be. Now, some folks may have a financial planner and work with them regarding that, and that probably would be included in their discussion. But quite frankly, the majority of folks don't have that opportunity. So we went back to Mutual of Omaha and asked, can we get another open enrollment? And with that open enrollment comes an opportunity to purchase on a guaranteed issue basis additional life insurance without health questions. And Mutual of Omaha's granted that if the city wants to do that. We would handle that communication and make sure that the employees understood what that benefit actually looked like. It's really nice for folks that have some health issues and can't buy life insurance. Term insurance, so it's not a cash value type of product, but inexpensive, competitively priced term insurance. Questions so far? Last thing I'd like to talk about is number 7. It's an employee assistance program. City of Vienna has one right now, as I understand it. I guess, when I say I guess, we did not realize that you'd established one. What I can tell you is this benefit in the employee assistance program whereby employees confidentially can have some therapy visits or counseling, whether it's by phone or in person, is becoming something that every one of our employers, if they don't have one, is inquiring about with what's going on with the opioid episodes and things such as that, and just common stressors of everyday life. So having all these benefits with Mutual of Omaha, the life insurance, short-term disability, long-term disability, Mutual of Omaha is willing to add an additional benefit employee assistance program telephonically, and there's actually some personal visits too. No additional cost other than 85 cents per employee per month. So they would add that in. And it's completely confidential. The city does not know. No one at the administration knows that Mark Schwindeman uses it or someone else accesses that benefit. We provided in your packet a description of that program, and it's just something for additional consideration. Total annual premium for everyone is $833. So even if you maintain your existing EAP, it might be something to consider as another additional option or additional benefit visits for those folks. Let me stop and see if there's questions, if I could.
Back to the HRA, what we reimburse employees after they meet your $250 out-of-pocket expense, whatever, like that middle number, obviously if it went down, how much we reimburse them for the insurance costs to go down. So that middle number could always change. Like say, the lower it goes, the lower it goes, obviously, the less it'll affect the cost of the premium, right? I mean, what we're paying, right?
That is correct.
Okay.
That's correct. Likewise, if you change the configuration of the health insurance plan and introduce co-insurance and things such as that, you'll notice the premium comes down as well. What we're doing there, or what you would in effect be doing, is shifting that cost from the city over to the employee at time of claim, right?
Right.
So that's how that works.
Okay. I mean, would it be like a significant amount of savings if, say, I mean, the plan we have now is $2,750 that we reimburse the employee. If that went down to $2,000, would that significantly drop the price of the insurance?
Let me take a stab at that. We can calculate that for you. We looked at when we looked at your utilization at 160,000 roughly, if we increased the contribution, went to the $5,000 deductible, kept the same out of pocket, we would have expected about a $43,000 increase. So 750 would probably, I'm gonna just comment on this, 3/4 of 43,000 going the other direction is probably about a $30,000 savings.
So think about the employees now, I mean,
We have great insurance for employees. I don't want to take that away from them. They deserve the best. So I'm not asking for anything about taking away, but I just think about cost savings. I mean, you're talking about that one little change would save us $30,000. You know, that's huge. So that's we can't talk about now, I guess, but it'd be neat to see some other numbers with that decreasing some.
Be happy to do that. If what I would like would be helpful for us if someone could configure what plan designs we'd like to see and maybe communicate through Amy and that be sent to us. Or we could come back with, here's what this looks like based on what we just described, taking it down to by 750 or something such as that. There's so many multiple options, we just like to make sure we're targeting what you would like to see.
Mark, thank you very much for your time this evening. Your service to our city is invaluable. We really appreciate all the work that you've done over the years. I think you understand us as a city as well as if we were your own employee. So thank you for the time that you and your staff take. And I'm sure that we'll be back in touch. And are you going to stay for the council meeting?
Let me ask, is that desired?
I mean, probably not,
Okay.
because we're going to move on into the budget process.
Sure.
So, and I know you've kind of been under the weather, so we probably should let you get out of here.
Okay, thank you so much. Let me just say this on behalf of the Schwindeman Agency. We certainly appreciate the relationship with the city. I get to play the piano, but our staff does the work, so I appreciate what they do, and your thank yous and are very much for our staff as just compared to me, so I appreciate that. Thank
Okay.
you. And
Have it-
obviously-
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Obviously, you can reach me whenever you have questions or
Okay.
other options.
Thank you very much. All right, for council, we're going to reconvene at 7 o'clock to start our regular council meeting. So you have about 3 or 4 minutes to take a break, stretch your legs, whatever. I am going to leave the live stream on. I'm going to turn the volume off, but the cameras will still be running. So we'll pick it back up at 7 o'clock. Good evening. Would you all stand with me for the invocation and pledge of allegiance, please? Councilman Rogers, please.
Let us pray. Our God, our Father in heaven, we thank you for this day, for the blessings given to all of us. We pray tonight that you will be with us and guide us as we go about the budget process. We take this time to especially pray for those that are doctors or nurses, healthcare benefit people, that whatever may hit this area as far as the coronavirus, be with them, help them to help those that are affected. Be with our leaders so that they can guide us through this period of time. We also continue to pray for those serving the armed forces abroad, serving in harm's way. Be with them, guard them, protect them. These things we pray in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. Councilman Conley, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As Councilman Rogers said, we're experiencing things in our lifetime that we've never dealt with before, and it's got pretty much our entire world turned upside down right now. But it's like all other problems that we face, we will get through this. And one of the most important things that's coming up for us as a state is the census. And so I would like to read a proclamation to you all before we actually start our regular council meeting, recognizing April 1st, 2020 as Census Day. I received my census packet in the mail today. I'm going to fill it out online. They anticipate it'll take about 10 minutes to do that. And so I encourage each and every one of you to fill that out and make sure that all of your neighbors and your friends do it. It is critically important to the state of West Virginia because they base a lot of the federal dollars that are distributed on the numbers that are accounted for in that census. So it is very critical that we give them an accurate count and that everyone participates. So this proclamation: whereas Article 1, Section 2 of the United States Constitution mandates that a census be conducted of the nation's population every 10 years, with the next census scheduled for April 1st, 2020. And whereas it is vital that all households in the city of Vienna complete and submit a census form, and every resident of our community counts and deserves to be counted. And whereas the census will determine distribution of federal and state funding allocated to communities for critical community services, including housing, transportation, health care, economic development, and other needs and services. And whereas census data ensures fair congressional representation by determining how many elected congressional representatives there will be for each state. And whereas it is essential that accurate data be collected from groups of people who are historically difficult to count, including young people, low-income individuals, military personnel, non-native English speakers, minorities, and rural residents. And whereas planning, outreach, local government involvement, and community education are required to ensure that the census is as accurate as possible. And whereas the information collected by the census is confidential and protected by law, and whereas the City of Vienna is participating in the Wood County Census 2020 Complete Count Committee and is making every effort to develop outreach activities especially designed to meet the needs of all residents and to reach those considered hard to enumerate. And will encourage every resident to accurately complete the census questionnaire online, over the telephone, or promptly return it by mail. Now therefore, I, Randall C. Rapp, Mayor of Vienna, do hereby proclaim April 1st, 2020 as Census Day in Vienna and recognize the importance of the 2020 census with a pledge for full support to achieving a complete and accurate census count. I strongly encourage each of you to take part, and to all of the citizens that are watching us live stream tonight, if you have difficulty, please contact my office. I know that a lot of the agencies are shut down right now, like the library, who was set up and trained to help you with this. We will make arrangements to get your census form filled out. I'd like to call to order the special session of the Vienna City Council for March the 19th, 2020. Let the record reflect that I've taken roll, that all members of council are present. Our city attorney was unable to make it this evening. He is at home if we need him to answer any questions that may arise. The minutes from the regular council meeting held on March the 12th, 2020 have been printed, posted, and circulated. Are there any corrections? There are no objections, and the minutes will stand approved as posted. The report of the treasurer will be given at the first meeting in April, and so we move right on in to our item of discussion this evening. It is a resolution approving the 2020-2021 general fund and coal severance budgets for submission to the West Virginia State Tax Commissioner. I'd like to read the resolution. Be it resolved by the Common Council of the City of Vienna that the general fund and coal severance budgets, copies of which are attached hereto for fiscal year 2020-2021, are hereby approved. The treasurer of the City of Vienna is hereby authorized and directed to forward the same to the West Virginia State Tax Commissioner for approval. The way this process will work this evening is we will entertain a motion and a second, and then we will open up the floor for discussion of the particular budget. So I'll entertain a motion for the approval of the resolution approving the general fund and coal severance budgets.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the general fund and coal severance budgets for 2020 and 2021. Before we start our discussion this evening and open the floor up, Mrs. Roberts, would you give us an overview, please?
Would you like me to get it?
I would, please.
Before I start, that budget is submitted to the state auditor's office, not to the state tax department. Just for
Thank you. We'll correct
point
that.
of reference, yeah. You have before you balanced general fund and coal severance budgets. Coal severance is unchanged from last year. The general fund budget, I have calculated in, I received the numbers yesterday from Mr. Schwindeman, and I calculated in the option number 1, which was the $5,000, $10,000 deductible, passing on as an increase to the employees, up to a $500 deductible, $3,000 in the middle, and $1,500 on the back end. I've built that in. As he talked about, the insurance plan is fluid. We had a couple people that are no longer in our employment, so they came off of the plan. We had people that changed what types of plans they had during the year. Maybe an individual went to a family dropped down to a parent and child. So all those changes, when they were calculated in, made a $7,696 change to general fund. This health insurance gets spread out over 4 funds, so the change to the general fund, $7,696, which I adjusted the street paving line item to $573,992. Any questions?
The budget as presented to you is a balanced budget. So now, is there any discussion on the budget?
When is this budget due to be turned into the state auditor's office?
I believe it's next Friday,
Next Friday.
but I have, there's a format that it has to be put into to get it there. It doesn't just go in this format.
I'm personally, with the stuff we talked about tonight with Schwindeman about the different options, we want to, that's kind of a change from what you have in the numbers. So I'm kind of uncomfortable with hearing the insurance numbers tonight and then voting on it the same night. That's my
I'm just
problem.
telling you how much is built in for insurance, okay? Now, how you choose to divide that up will be up to you. That's what I have included in this budget for
Okay.
insurance. You can choose to change that up until the time our renewal happens. But this is just how much money I've put in the budget to cover those costs.
We are
And I'm telling you, I based it on that.
And that came out of the 7,000 came out of the streets.
Yes.
Is that what you said?
The street paving,
Okay.
which lowered it down to $573,000.
Mike, we are, as a matter of clarification, we are not voting to accept the insurance plan this evening. There's still considerable discussion to go on about how we customize the plan. You know, Mark explained that there are options that we need to explore.
Right.
The whole point of his presentation and Amy's numbers, you have to plug a number into the budget
Right.
to make it balance. That is where we're at. The number that she has plugged in would be the highest number.
We could stay the same, and it would be
It won't
keep
be
the
any-
exact same plan, and it would be higher, and we
Right.
would have to adjust some other numbers accordingly. But that can always be done by a budget revision.
Okay, so the number for the insurance is not critical
Okay.
to this.
And that can be done right up till renewal? Did I understand that,
Well, the
Amy?
budget revision I can't do until July 1st, but if you choose to go with a different plan,
Uh-huh.
come July 1st, I'll prepare a budget revision to those group insurance line items, and we'll.
Based on the different options that we
Yes.
heard tonight.
Yes, I'm just telling you what I have built in
Okay.
is the 2.2%.
Okay,
And
thank
the
you.
different deductibles,
Thank you.
yes.
And I believe that we would need to submit that number for the renewal about six weeks before July 1st. But we've got a couple of months to work that out, so. You know.
And Amy, I thank you for putting in, because I love that we saw the actual numbers from last year actually as compared to the budget. And I know there's a lot of line items that we asked for the same amount this year that we didn't even touch last year. So I'm just wondering why, because the balance of the budget, I know that's great, but why couldn't we put some of this money that's probably not going to be used back in the streets to help pave our streets? Is it's a big concern of the cities, and I know there's we have $1,000 travel for the councilman, I think, in here. We don't use that, and why can't we?
I mean, in the past, we have had councilmen that have used that. They've gone to municipal league meetings. They've gone to National League of Cities meetings. It's not being used right now, but what we've done is build a framework to which we can work within. Now, if you don't do that, then you have to come back for every nickel and dime with a budget revision, and that extremely slows down the process. But that's completely up to you. You can amend that budget. You can take it out. You can put it towards street paving. That's your
Well, we
choice.
typically act on carryover at some point anyway, right? Is that correct?
Yes. If it's not used, it goes into the carryover.
Right.
We I believe the last 7 years have had a higher than $1 million.
And we can put that
carryover.
wherever we can put that
Yes.
wherever we want.
Yes.
Along the same lines as Mike's talking about, there's areas in this that I'm not comfortable with, as I've spoken to in the past, and I'm still not comfortable with. And I'm just going to give you a couple of examples that I would like to see an amendment made and a reduction made, and there again, maybe those monies applied certainly to the streets department. One of them, and I'm going to go back to line 58 in 410 for council, which is the manhole project. Last year we had 25,000. This year we raised it up to 100,000 to do a walk around that facility. And again, I think we need to start taking care of what we already have before we do more. So I would like to see that change from that 100,000 back to the 25,000 that it was last year and apply that $75,000 to streets for additional blacktopping. The other area that I look at is, just as an example, right below that, you have building inspections, you have a vehicle there. In my personal opinion, when you're talking about building inspections, I don't see the need for a new vehicle. I know we're talking about a couple of new police vehicles. I would certainly, in my mind, think that we could take the best of the two police vehicles that's coming out of service and allocate that vehicle to building inspection. And there again, you would take that money that would be saved there and apply it to the streets as well. And I think there's other areas as well that we need to look at, but I don't know what the mechanism is, but I would like to certainly be able to have the opportunity to act on that as part of this budget this evening.
I believe once a motion is made, you can choose to amend that motion.
You're correct.
Do you want to come here? No?
I just want to speak with respect to the consideration of the Manville money. So as I shared when I did the last status update, we've got, and when the mayor talked about this $100,000 in the Manville budget, the uncertainty we have right now is with what I mentioned, the PCBs and the transformers. We have deadlines and requirements in this voluntary remediation program that we need to keep. The 25,000, I think we ended up with maybe about 10,000 that might be a carryover, although I know we had an invoice coming in. And so, I oppose removing that $100,000 from the Manville. I certainly hope it will end up being a carryover. But if it's not, then we're going to be back having the discussion about a budget revision to deal with these issues. And again, we've entered a contract with West Virginia Department of Environmental Protection, and so I would oppose that. With respect to, well, really, that's all I had.
I would like to also respond to Mr. Conley's comments about that. The vehicle that's in the building inspection, I don't have the number in front of me, but that vehicle that they've been driving is about 20 years old now. They add a quart of oil to it faster than they put gasoline in that vehicle. And the other vehicle that's in that department is a hand-me-down police cruiser. It's one of the old Dodge Durangos. And so we've been giving these fellows, the worn-out equipment that we've had over the past few years. And so I would also encourage council to leave that vehicle in, simply because we've been driving junk in that department now for years. So we need to upgrade at least one of the vehicles in that fleet. So I would encourage you all to leave that in there. As far as the Manville money goes, that is a target number. As Jim explained, we have some unexpected costs down there, but we have no idea where that's going to turn out until some further testing is done, and we have to be prepared for that, or we will have to come back to council for a budget revision in order to fund the necessary cleanup or testing or whatever that the state mandates us to do. We've done a terrific job up to this point of the development of that property, and so I would like us to continue to go in that direction so that someday that we can turn it over and have a very nice facility for our citizens.
I guess I'd like to know how we pick and choose what we fund. I understand what you're talking about, funding the project, but at the same time, there again, we're talking about funding something that's an unknown. One thing that we do know for sure is that our infrastructure definitely has to have a 5 and a 10-year plan, and we need to start doing something to fund that 5 and 10-year plan. That's real. We know what we need to do there, and we know that it's coming, and we really have done nothing to address putting funds in this budget to cover a 5 and a 10-year plan, but yet we will jump right in there and fund that project down there. So I guess I'm struggling to kind of understand how we pick and choose what we fund and what we don't. Again, I repeat, we need to take care of what we've already got before we start biting off new parts.
Relative to the vehicle, for that we talked about, does anybody know anything about the condition of the 2 police vehicles that are proposed to be replaced?
As far as what, Roger? Mileage or
The
what?
condition, mileage, the condition of them?
Well, they'll be the oldest 2 in the fleet, and you know, their mileage is approaching 100,000 miles each. Typically, what happens is when we get new cruisers, the oldest in the fleet are rolled out, and so
Sure.
I mean, you can't expect our officers to not drive dependable vehicles.
No.
I know,
No,
I know
yeah,
you, I know
yeah.
you agree.
Yeah, I'm not saying that at all, absolutely
understand.
not, but,
Are you asking, is it in any condition to pass on? Is
yes.
that what you're
Yes,
wanting to know?
I'm curious about that.
Yeah, I'm so sorry, I don't have that information.
Okay.
But even at 100,000 miles, with today's vehicles, 100,000 miles is
No.
nothing on a vehicle. I mean, absolutely nothing.
I was thinking more along the lines of, maintenance costs and those types of things. I mean, I get the idea of hand-me-down vehicles, but, you don't want to hand down, in my opinion, hand down vehicles that are not going to be dependable. So, I'll get some information on those vehicles, just out of curiosity. So.
Yeah, I just make one point about 100,000 miles is not always 100,000 miles, because, you know, you hear somebody advertising a car like, oh, that's 100,000 road miles. Well, these police cruisers, that 100,000 miles has been, 500,000 turns and braking and, that the stop and go and the wear and tear on those cruisers, I don't know what it would be, but I bet there's a ratio out there that the kind of miles they put on those cars are a lot harder than, a lot of traditional type miles on cars.
And the idling on vehicles too, when they answer calls, I mean, they don't turn their vehicles off a lot of times depending on the situation. Those vehicles idle a long time, so they have that is wear and tear on those motors as well.
But there again, you're talking about them going to a department that gets into a vehicle and that worst case scenario drives at the speed limit from one end of the town to another, with zero abuse to the vehicle. They're not hauling anything. They're driving to do an inspection. Nothing much required of that vehicle except just being reliable enough to get you from point A to point B.
I'll speak real loud, Amy. Surely you can hear me. With Mike. Did you find how many vehicles we're financing now currently in the budget? I mean, as far as that goes,
I showed Roger that the last time I had it.
because we're just asking for 5 vehicles, right? Is that what we're asking for? It was 9, and we put down 9 to finance.
I don't think it ever was,
Was it on 9?
Okay, in this 2021 budget, in September, we will be paying off a street department skid steer. We will be paying off a round of police cruisers. We will be paying off the camera truck in October. Okay, besides those that are coming off, we have 2 fire trucks. We have 2 other rounds of police cruisers, because we typically have 3 going, because we finance them for 3 years. So 2 fire trucks, 2 years of cruisers, a mini excavator for the park, and 2 park trucks.
Mike, can you, Roger, can you bend that microphone towards Mike? They are saying that they cannot hear Mike when he talks.
Okay, Ross. Yeah, I'm sorry about this, guys.
Not your fault.
All right, my question was just how many trucks we're financing currently now within the city, and Amy gave me the answer. That was my question, so thank you for that. Yeah, my thing with the budget, I mean, I like what we have in there, most of it, but when you're talking about the entire budget, there's some things that I don't agree with, so that's why I don't want to vote for the budget. You guys know, with the one issue is, we talked about the department head asking for a $5,000 raise. I'm against that. So I know, Bruce, you spoke for it last time. That's fine. We'll have one vote, but That's why I have a hard time. There's little things in the budget that we really haven't talked about in detail. You know, whether we vote for the budget individually, I don't know. I don't know how to do this, you know, as far as that goes.
Those items all have to be, they all have to come forward for their own vote. So you can vote that down, and that money will just be there that could be reappropriated to the streets at that time, or it'll just go into the carryover.
Okay.
So, for example, last year that came up, right? We passed the budget. That item came up. You voted it down. So that money is just sitting there.
Okay.
Which we could appropriate it somewhere else if we needed it to. Or at the end of the year, it'll just go into the carryover.
Okay, so it'll be there, just not for, okay.
Right.
So
But
at
those
that-
things
I'm
have to
sorry.
be voted on. So,
At that time, we can request that it be allocated to a specific line item like
sure, you
streets?
could, yeah. If it's voted down, then you could say, we voted it down. Can you see that, you know, we do a budget revision to put that into the street department?
Any further discussion?
Yeah, I would like to make a motion that we change the line item 58 on the Manville from 100,000 to 25,000. We reallocate that $75,000 to streets.
Because, I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we amend the existing budget to reduce the amount under line item 58 under the 410 council and reduce that amount to $25,000 and move the $75,000 over to the street department line, which is line item 58.
Yes.
And increase that the $573,992 by $75,000. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion?
Because I think that originally, when we first did this budget, we were asking for the $100,000 to put it around the track. I thought that a walking trail around, is that what we originally intended it for, or was it?
It is for the development of Manville, Mike. It's one of those things where, you know, we've owned that piece of property now for 5 years. Someday, you know, it's used every day by many, many people. And there's a lot of people in Vienna that like to walk. If there are funds available, then yes, I would like to start that project with a walking trail that enhances the riverfront and allows our people to, you know, instead of walking to McDonough, which is fairly hilly, that we would have a flat surface where, you know, people could walk and bring their families down and do whatever. And so that's the reason why that I asked for that money to be in there, is simply because, you know, we can't bite off an enormous amount of money. But if we add a little bit to it every chance that we can, then we can develop that and find out what the community actually wants. So having said that, I would encourage council to vote the amendment down. I would encourage them to leave the funding in there for the expenses at Manville and the possible development of the walking trail.
Because I think with $100,000, and I know Mr. Leach ran on this, and you've done fine with their Manville. You've cleaned it up, this and that. But you know, we're into $2 million of price tag so far with no return yet. And eventually, we hope there will be a return. But I think the immediate need you're talking about: do we want a walking trail around a place we can't really use yet, or do we want $175,000 more in streets which need repaired? That's where I'm coming from as far as the whole financial aspect of it. Yes, I want to develop it just as much as Mr. Leach does, but I think, like say, we're what do we wants versus needs? Heck yeah, I want a boat ramp down there. I want all that stuff, and I think it will be there one day. But you know, this 4 years we spent $2 million and it's still sitting there. We're not done yet, so I'm afraid that $100,000 earmarked toward a track is going to go for remediation costs and things like that. So.
Just as a point of clarification, Mike, it's not 175, it's only 75. You said you wanted to transfer the 175 to the streets. It's not
75, yeah. It's $100,000 total, yeah.
It's
75, I'm sorry.
75, okay. And Mr. Leach, if you would,
It's good over there.
the riverfront side of the parcel requires no further action.
Yeah, and that's kind of the one thing I was mentioning, Mike. You know, you said there's been no return. I have to disagree with you. You know, we've gotten the Riverside out of the remediation program. It's available for our citizens to use. It's being used all the time. The Gold Star Memorial is there. We're using that for various functions and so forth. So, you know, and then and as far as the uncertainty, you know, this is, you know, I keep hearing this wants versus needs. Well, that's, you know, each of us have our opinion on what is a want and what is a need, and we certainly don't see eye to eye on that. So I would also, you know, ask that we vote down the motion to remove this funding from Manville.
Well,
Mr.
it was-
Leach, do you see a time period when we might see some type of certification on that property down there?
Well, it's, the last time I
Could it be
spoke, it's what I said.
May, June, July?
The last time I spoke of this, and I'll just briefly bring you up to date. So all of the files that the mayor has right now, and then what Ray gave me, he's retired now, you know, we're going through, it's these transformers, and there's a level of PCBs that can get us out of, you know, the reporting requirements. So far, Tom Rebar has FOIA'd West Virginia DEP. He has FOIA'd the EPA. He's exhausted everything he's had to find that information. Now I'm going up and going through what we have and hope we find it. So now, until we know where we're gonna have to do on this testing, I mean, I do hope, you know, I do expect to get out of this program in 2020, because everything else is done. All the, you know, soil and water testing on the arsenic, which again is, we've talked about forever, but it is these transformers. And so until we get those answers to how we're gonna have to deal with that, I can't give you a definitive answer, except that we're working on it.
But you feel that in the next budget period, we should definitely know?
You're not going to get definitely out of me, but we should. I'm doing what I can to get
Right,
us
I
through this.
understand
Yeah.
that.
So
I appreciate
yeah,
it.
I mean, because I can't guarantee something that is up to somebody else to approve.
Okay.
And it kind of takes us back to the whole thing with the money. You know, we know we want to have that done, but right now we know for sure our streets need paved more streets paving. You know, we don't know what the future, John. There's kind of a question of what's going to happen down there eventually. We want it to happen. It will happen, hopefully. But right now, we know we need streets paved and things like that. That's why I'm talking about the money of it.
I
You know,
I'm sorry. I just real quickly. We have an obligation, based on our contract with the state of West Virginia, to stay within this program. All right. That, to me, is a need.
It was my understanding when you spoke to us last time, Councilman Leach, that we still did not have the, I'm not sure the correct terminology, the clearance, the all clear for even the lower, we was waiting to get it, and the upper at the same time. Is that still the case?
It's like what was in the paper. They are under one project number, okay? So that will be closed out together. But no, there's no restriction. There's, you know, as long as we stay within the guidelines that are required for the Riverside, yeah, we can put in the walking trail. We can do the things that we want to do.
Do we have documentation that tells us what those restrictions are on the Riverside?
Yes, I believe those are mapped, and they should be in the repository if Tom's doing his job. But the, you know, it's the land use covenants. It's like the three areas that we capped. If you want to do any excavating there, you got to follow the guidelines to do that. And that would be the same thing, that, you know, that it would be just like what Craig did before. You know, basically, well, I'm not going to get into it, but you just, yeah, and those are really, you know, the main, because it was just those three areas that we capped. We can't, you know, as far as the parking lot, for example, that's a part of the cap. You know, if you're going to resurface it, just resurface it. But if you're going to remove it, you'd have to follow those guidelines.
And those guidelines are basically a continuation of the remediation that would be.
Yeah, it's the culmination of the remediation, which is the land use covenants that are on the property. You promise to stay within the covenants that are attached to that ground, and that will be into perpetuity.
I'm going to go along with, and I agree with what Mike is saying. You know, we've already stated here this evening that that's an unknown, that we're not sure what we have to do there. Well, it's a fact that we have to redo 6 miles of streets every year. That's a fact. No,
Now it's 6.
it's always been.
I remember 4, but it's on the record.
Well, you're right. I stand corrected. I stand corrected. But with that being said, we've still been doing less than half of that.
Where do you
And
get
it-
that number? What's the basis of 4
well, there's basically,
Mike,
there's roughly,
Would you give him the
there's
microphone,
roughly
please?
60 miles of streets within the city of Vienna that the city is responsible for, not counting the state roads and highways. And I'm talking about blacktop, and I know that some of our streets are concrete. Any reputable asphalt installer will tell you that the average lifespan of a blacktop highway properly installed and properly maintained is 15 years. So it's math at that point. You get 15, you got 60 miles, so, and you're right, that's where the 4 come from. So is that scientific? No, but it's a very, very, very good rule of thumb. And when we're not even doing half of that, then we're not getting close. We have to do that. We have to do better. You know, one thing's for sure, I'm sure the citizens all want to, and as Mike alluded to, we want to see that done. We want to be able to have walkways around, but we want to drive on the streets to get there too. Those streets are driven on every day. I understand fully that there are a few people down at that facility every single day. Guarantee it. I see that. But we're driving on our streets. Our citizens are driving on our streets every single day. It's our responsibility to make sure that we keep up with the streets in an adequate manner.
One other thing I would like to bring to council's consideration is, you know, if you go through the budget and you look at each one of the requests that's in every one of these departments, you will find things in there that, you know, we can all pick and choose. Mike, you represent the Parks Department. There's a requisition or a request in there for $20,000 for a plan, to have a plan made by a certified planner that's had a lot of experience on what direction should be done in the park. And so I support that kind of investment because you do that study, it tells us where to invest our dollars. He's had experience with other cities that have made, you know, developments in Marion County and other areas around the state. And so when you look at these line items and you look there, you have to have vision. Yes, our citizens require us to have good streets and they want their infrastructure to be solid. But if you don't plan for the future, and we have a 5-year plan and we're working on the 10-year plan for the upgrade of where we want to take our city, if you don't have vision of where we're going to be in the future, we're going to get left behind. And so the $20,000 that's in there for the park, okay, that'll tell us where the best direction is for a city our size on how we develop things. It's the same with the $100,000 that's in there for the Manville project. I have no idea how much money is going to be left over once we get this next phase of testing done. But down the road, you know, most of the people that I talk to want the development down there. They want to see those kind of things. Well, the other thing, the soccer program in our city is probably the most attended by all of our youth. We don't have any area where we can put soccer fields. You know, we take the outfield of our biggest baseball field and we run approximately 4 different soccer leagues out of that one area every time. That's a beautiful area down there. That's 15 acres of nice ground with a beautiful view that could be made into a really, really nice soccer complex. But that's years down the road. If you, as you go through this budget, you can pick and choose things in there that you don't like I don't like this vehicle, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that. But the reality of it is, there are things that have to be done to plan for the future. There are things that have to be done because if we don't upgrade some of these vehicles that we have, we're going to be driving junk that breaks down all the time. And, you know, when you take, they have meetings over at Flatwoods for the building inspector, and when he drives that 20-year-old Jeep all the way over there, and the thing breaks down or blows up on the road, then we're going to have to tow that thing all the way back here. You know, it's just these particular items that are, you know, you were talking about a $10 million budget, okay? And so in this budget, there are things in there that every department has put in there that will either plan for the future or make sure that at some point down the road, we don't have to buy a handful of vehicles all at the same time. We try to spread that out so that each vehicle gets a new vehicle in a reasonable amount of time. In previous council years, when Bob Marshall was here, he was the finance chairman, and Bob had a 7-year rotation. He wanted new trucks every 7 years. And we did that for, I don't know, several years. And so, you know, but we're not on that now. We're averaging 15, 20 years out of these vehicles that we have. And with the police cruisers, you know, these officers pretty much live in those cruisers. And so when you get 100,000 in-town miles, those are not, as Jim alluded to, those are not actual odometer miles. I mean, those vehicles have been run pretty hard. And so, you know, I would encourage you that as you think about this budget, you know, don't get hung up on a simple item in one budget or whatever, because, you know, it's like the $20,000 in there. That's only for a plan. That's for someone to tell us what we should do, you know, but that's an investment in the future. And we have to do a certain amount of that every year.
Yeah, I mean, the $20,000 is a great investment from what I see, but then again, there was a lot of things taken out of that budget that were nixed, you know, than the parks director, you know, so there's things that he wanted or needed, but those were taken out anyway, so $20,000 is a good investment because we're planning for the future. I agree with that.
As far as planning for the future, Mayor, you've alluded a couple different times to the fact that we have a 5-year plan. Where is that 5-year plan and how is it funded? I haven't seen a copy of that 5-year plan.
Oh, it's been in existence for 5 years. You're welcome to look at it. We've got, there's
That's
copies
what
of
I'm
that
saying.
all over
I'd
the
like
place.
for all of us
And
to see
when
it.
you say how's it funded, it's funded through the general budget because these are things that we need to do. The 10-year plan, which we're just getting in the process of rewriting, in the back section of the 10-year plan, there are several pages in there that say, here's what we think should be done. In reviewing that 10-year plan, we have completed almost every item in that 10-year plan. Now it's time to plan for the next 10 years, and where does the citizens of Vienna want this town to be in the next 10 years?
But evidently within that 5-year plan, how much infrastructure replacement was in that 5-year plan that we've accomplished?
Tremendous amount.
Tell me.
Greg, I don't have
What
the
have we
report in front of me,
replaced?
but I'll be glad to get that for
I
you
would like
because
to see
we've
that.
done.
What are you referring to infrastructure?
Water lines.
Well, water lines.
I understand. I'm talking as a citizen now, not necessarily as just a councilman. I understand we now have no control over that.
Well, I will get
Streets,
you.
bridges, streets.
Yes, we've replaced a bridge, but let me
We
get you
replaced
that.
a bridge.
Let me get you that, Roger, because
So for example, you know, when you mentioned, like, you put out some numbers about the difference in the enterprise fund. And so I went looking, or got some information about, you know, what was responsible for that change. And that was, a lot of that was when we put in all the automatic reading electric, water meter, what are they, not electric, but electronic? Water meters. Yeah, where, so it did two things. Like, for example, now all our citizens, that was, I think, as distributed across the water, sewer, and general fund, you know, that was probably about $1.5 million project, and it eliminated the need for meter reading every single meter in the city. It eliminated or not eliminated, but it gave the city the opportunity to give people water leak notices because we could tell. You know, so that's an example of what was in that plan.
So we gained efficiency?
Pardon?
So we gained efficiency?
And, well, right, again, I mean.
And we
also
hired 30 more
upgrade.
employees.
and what?
And we added 30 employees in the last 5-6 years, but we've gained a lot of efficiency.
You're talking out of this is not a correlation here, okay?
Of course
The water
it
and
is.
sewer projects don't come under the general fund budget, so I'd really rather not stray off that. If you'd like to have this discussion, we'll get you the 5-year plan, which includes all of the improvements that we've done. But most of those 5-year plan improvements were done as bridge replacement, the electronic meter project, all of the upgrades on the water tanks, the rehab of the sewer plant. I mean, our infrastructure is good for at least 20 years and probably longer than that because everything was either rebuilt or was installed brand new. And we went with glass line tanks as opposed to steel tanks. We've done it so that we don't have to do the continual painting of those things. But those are not general fund items, Roger. So I will get you that 5-year plan. You can take a look at it, and then we'll answer whatever questions you have in regard to that.
I understand, but as a citizen, I would suggest that when you do the budget for the water and sewer, keep in mind what you just said. We've done all these things to increase our efficiency, but somewhere along the line, and I'm not telling you that it's all in that department, but our employee level has grown from 50 to 81, I believe, is the number. So we continually do these things and spend this money to create efficiencies. When you create efficiencies, you don't hire people, you replace people through attrition. And we're going the other direction. So no sense in me arguing that any further. Next question: How many road legal vehicles do we have in our fleet within the city of Vienna at this time?
I think Mr. Skogstad would say we're a little off the task.
No, we're not.
We have an amendment and everything on.
Okay.
We need to vote on the amendment, whether we're gonna do it or not. The only reason why I asked time frame is that if that amendment that you asked for is not passed,
I'm good with that.
the 100,000 is in there. It is still in there, and if we get an all clear, like in September, October or something, and we only spend 50,000, and then we get at that time reappropriate the rest of the money to go into streets, like you said, if we wanted to.
So why
Mr.
can't we
Eden's question earlier was also dealing with a department head raise, which he had objection. That has to come back by ordinance, and if we don't pass it, then that can be reappropriated to streets, but those are in the budget and can be done. But we need to deal with the amendment right now.
Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Then I'll call for the question, and please help me with this, Roger, because I want to make sure that I say it right. The amendment to the budget is to reallocate the $100,000, or excuse me, to reallocate $75,000 out of line item 58 in the 410 department line item over to the street paving item, which is 570 line item 58. And
Yes, sir.
that is it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So then the amendment on the floor is to amend the budget to move $75,000 out of that line item to the streets. All those in favor of the amendment, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. The amendment fails 5-2 or 2-5, okay? And so we go back to the general discussion on the budget as a whole. Is there further discussion on the budget?
I'd like to make a motion that we remove the vehicle on line item 51 under 436 building inspections and apply that money to the streets department and bring the best of the two vehicles coming from the police department, put that in the building inspections fleet. Line item 59, correct.
Is there a second on the motion?
There is no second on the
Oh.
motion.
Second, I didn't mean, okay, second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we remove line item 59 out of 436 from the budget as it is, and put those funds back over into the, not back over, but transfer those funds into the street paving project. Is that correct, Councilman?
Yes, sir.
All right.
That's correct.
Is there any discussion on that amendment?
I'd like to see, as I said earlier, get some information to see and learn about the condition of that best vehicle that would be leaving the police department, that would be coming down, before we would take any action on that.
Well, the amendment's on the floor, so we're going to vote on it. Okay.
Vehicle before it would be purchased would have to come back to council. Before that building inspection vehicle would be purchased, it would have to come back to council for approval.
But you want to know the condition of the vehicle that we're taking out of the fleet, correct?
Yeah, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
going forward.
Right.
We can get you that. We can get Chief Pfeiffer to tell.
Sure.
I don't know which two vehicles are being
I don't think it's
taken out of the fleet.
been decided yet.
Okay. All
I
right.
guess
Just
my only
now
point,
getting-
I'm sorry, I
We're
apologize.
just now getting the two vehicles that were ordered the last time in. One of them is in, the second one isn't. So we are still gonna rely on those vehicles until we get up to full speed on the vehicles that we need.
Gotcha.
And my last comment on that was I cannot imagine that we have a vehicle that's in the police department today being used every day but that it's not in a good enough condition that the building inspection people couldn't drive it from one end of the town to another for a year without having any issues, or to, drive it up to the mountains for a meeting or whatever. If it's used every day by the police department now, I understand that, they have to be, a rotation there, but I can't fathom that vehicle being so bad that they can't use it.
I can't speak for Chief Pfeiffer because I know they do keep a couple of the older cruisers over there as backups in case one of the regular ones has to go in for maintenance or something. And so my guess is the ones that are there are going to be taken out of the used fleet that they keep as spares. But Roger, I do not know the answer to that. Okay.
We can get that for you.
Is there any other discussion on the amendment to remove line item 59 out of the building inspection 436?
I'd like to say this one comment. There is a Dodge Durango over there in the parking lot. It is a former police vehicle. The brakes were not working. The tires needed to be replaced. The transmission was slipping. And Linda Kearns was using it to get supplies for the senior center. And she's scared to use that vehicle anymore. So it's sitting over there. I would hope that if we got a police vehicle, it's not one of the regular sedans or whatever. It's not like an SUV or whatever, but an SUV is something that a building inspector would need because they need to carry equipment like ladders and other things in the vehicle. And you can't really do that in a regular car that you can do it. It has to be something like an SUV or something like that. The amount taken out of this year's budget or next year's budget would be $11,000. I don't think that is that much as far as that is concerned, but I don't know what the vehicles of the police department are going to be trading in, but I do know that I don't know if it's this year or last year, but a police officer was on his way to a call for an emergency. Then on the way, the car blew up, the engine blew up. Even though they're maintained very much and oil's changed on a regular basis and all that stuff, there is basically problems. We've donated to them before to other police departments like in Worth County and other things because basically for parts, other than that, they're not really very good or safe to drive around if it would come back into our fleet. So, I mean, 11,000 out of this is not that much. Basically, I'm saying basically oppose the amendment.
Any further
I
discussion?
know it's going to pass. It'll pass 5-2. But the thing about Bruce is you're talking about only $11,000. Well, that's $11,000 over 3 to 5 years. So it's not just $11,000 we're financing. It's the same amount of money. We're just financing. So actually, we're paying more because we're paying finance charges. So
It's
3 years. Okay. So $11,000 for 3 years that's a hunk of change.
And you reduce your cost by starting. 11,000 here, 11,000 there. It's not that much. 100,000 here. It's not that much. 20,000 here. It's not that much. Folks, it adds up. You cut your cost by starting. And we're not going to get there until we start. We have to start.
Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Then I'll call for the question. All those in favor of the amendment to remove line item 59 out of 436 in the building inspection and transfer the $11,167 to the street fund, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. Motion fails 2-5. Gentlemen, council members, we go back to the budget. Is there any further discussion on the budget as presented?
Yeah, I'd like to make another motion, and it'll fail 5-2, but I'd like to make a motion to remove, I don't know what line item is, but I don't know what the total is now for the Human Resource Director, to move that to the streets, the raise.
Is there a second?
No, but Amy's giving them the dollar amount. So we'll get that in just a second.
So we have to keep 35 cents in one for longevity, which comes to $700 and some dollars. So if we take that out of the $7,000, it would be approximately $6,300.
Would you restate your amendment, please, Mike?
I'd like to make a motion to remove the line item for $6,300 from the Human Resource Director to the streets.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the line item for salary in the Human Resource Department be reduced by $6,300 and moved to the street department line item. Is there any further discussion?
And my whole thought behind this, I know, Bruce, you're going to be for it, and I know that, and it's, like I say, it's going to be 5-2, and that's fine, but I just want to get the record of who votes for what. The thing about when the Human Resource Director made her presentation, you know, when you put Chief Scholl's job and Chief Pfeiffer's job and all these other jobs, you can't compare Human Resources to a police chief job or a fire chief. And with her position, I've seen her gradual raises over the years. She's been here 7 years, and it's went from $34,000 to 40. How much is it now, Amy? I mean, 7 years ago it was $34,000. So she's been compensated, but to come in, I mean, if you would have had some kind of, if you compared your job, a human resource job, to another city this size or another group of employers, but just to come in, ask for a blanket this amount of raise because she's the lowest paid department head, to me it just doesn't have any bite to it. And that's why I just don't see the need for anything other than a standard raise because, okay, 41.4, so $7,000 raise, you know, and that's, you know, without any, I know, you know, if she went back to school, got her bachelor's degree or something to increase her knowledge, I don't know what, I mean, I think she's added a task, I think you gave her some more task, but for to ask for a raise that much. I mean, the standard raise, I mean, the standard dollar an hour.
The amount in last year's budget that I just gave you included a raise that wasn't given.
Right, okay,
So I don't want to inflate.
So there's two things I'd like to address that, Mike.
okay.
Even if the raise passes, she'll still be the lowest department head in the city. This is not putting her up above anybody else. But I really have to take exception to your remarks about her job not being of the same level as the fire chief or the police chief. You know, this whole...
I'll tell you, I'll save you some time. I'll retract that. Her job is just as important. Everyone's job in the city. I mean, we got the great employees. Everyone's job is important. Her job is just as important as Chief Scholl's or Craig Metz. I get that. I don't mean to downplay her role at all because human resources, that's not my cup of tea. It takes a special person to do that with 81 employees, I know. So, yeah, I retract that. I don't mean to downgrade the human resource job. I have a good friend who's HR with a big plan. I respect what they do. So I respect her position. I don't mean to downgrade her at all. So take that off the table. I apologize for that.
And I'm
Okay.
okay, so I'm glad you feel that way, but I
Yeah.
still want to reinforce the council since you've brought this up. Because of this coronavirus, she went from a normal job to right in front. I'm telling you right now, she is absolutely doing her level best to make sure that every person in the city is protected from all of this social distancing and all of the things that keep this virus away from our employees. Her job has absolutely went from a level 6 to a 12. No one was prepared for this degree of what we're dealing with right now. The entire community, the entire state, our entire nation, the entire world is turned upside down because of this. I can tell you right now, I am extremely grateful to have Stephanie work for the city because I'm telling you, it doesn't make any difference whether it's going out and getting hand wipes or going and have meetings with the employees to teach them about keeping your distance and all of the things. I mean, she is in this thing 110%, and we're very lucky to have someone with the dedication that she has because she's proving her mettle right now with her handling of this situation. It's a terrible situation. And so I hope every council member understands all of the things that have been thrown onto her plate just with maintaining the safety of our employees. I mean, it's not going to go away. This is going to go on for an extended period of time. But anyway, I thank you for, I'm sure you understand, but I mean, it's a whole different level now because of what she's taken on. We're having meetings with everybody over the city, and she's absolutely up to speed on all of the rules about people that get time off and people that you have to send home and FMLA and all of the things that come into play because of the employees at risk that everybody has. And so I couldn't do it. I can tell you right now, it is a job that is just, it has exploded. And so, I just, that's my take on that. And I hope everybody appreciates that. Craig is a department head. Stephanie's been very, very involved with you all throughout this whole process. Yeah.
Before this even, right. She has a lot of stuff on her plate as HR director. She goes all over to all of the departments, any issue that comes up. She is very busy on that, and I think she deserves to have her salary increased where it's comparable to other department heads.
Yeah, but I understand what you're saying.
This last budget year, they council, and I voted against it, I'll be the first to tell you, they gave individual employees who now are making more money than the HR director. That isn't right. That has got to be fixed.
Okay. So any other comments before Bruce? Yes, sir.
I would like to go back to what Amy said a little while ago. Even though this raise is in the budget, we have to vote on it as an ordinance to go into effect. So if we vote no at the time it comes up, that just goes back into the budget. And I'd like to also say this. When this came up the last time, we also had a raise for an IT person. And what happened to the two IT guys that we had? They left because they were offered higher paying jobs. And we have a good person as a human resource right now. And I don't want her out there looking for somewhere else to go because I'd like to keep her a hold. She knows the situations that's been here, and she's keeping the personnel records pretty well up. And, I'd like to see her stay, and I don't want her to leave because of a little bit of a raise that she is asking for. Thank you.
Like I said, I talk about when I was a councilman, I don't have any personal agenda. It's just what I hear from the people. I know it's $6,000. I haven't heard anybody speak for a raise for one person for $6,000. That's why, as a councilman, it's not my personal agenda. I don't have a personal agenda. It's just what I hear from the community, from the citizens who vote us in this property, in this office, who pay the taxes, who pay these people. It's not my money; it's theirs. So that's why I base my facts on.
Just as a
The
point
only
of
question is,
excuse me,
Mike,
Bruce.
I'm glad that you're bringing up these objections because you haven't voted for a budget in quite some time. And last time I asked what kind of things were in a budget you objected to, so I'm glad you're bringing these things up.
Oh.
But you still must realize that if this goes through in the budget, then we can still later on in the budget correct it. And I don't know who you're talking to. Those citizens you're talking to, are they aware of this or not? And I'll tell you this, I bet they are not aware that we will have to vote on this some other time as far as the budget is concerned.
Just as a point of clarification, the $6,300 seems like a large sum of money, but that's not the actual raise. That also includes the benefits that go along with it. That is the dollar amount there.
And I just want to put in everybody knows that I do support this raise for Stephanie, and I do see what she does. Like Belpre is probably a similar size population. Their HR director makes $51,000, being the lowest paid. But we've talked about all of the expenses involved with our employees and managing our employees with the city, most particularly health insurance. Stephanie, as I've seen, has been pretty instrumental in working with them to make them understand, like that flexible savings account tonight. that can be in fact, I had to stop and ask Mark a couple of questions to make sure I understood what he's saying, and I deal with a lot of insurance. You know, in Stephanie's role in supporting all of our employees in trying to make sure, because you also heard Mark talk about our exposure this year was up. You know, part of that has to do with some employee situations, but the year before he mentioned it, you know, Blue Cross went down 5%, all right? And as we move into this virtual world of medicine and competitive shopping for expensive MRIs and things like that, the only person that's going to bring our employees up to speed is from the HR department. All right, and so when you talk about, like since we've been in these chairs, we've lost 3 department heads, right? And for whatever reason, and whether you agree or not, but the point is we've lost a lot of institutional knowledge with those 3 people leaving the city of Vienna. I mean, decades, okay? You know, Stephanie has spent the last several years coming up to speed in this position, learning what she needs to learn, and by all accounts from department heads that I talk to, is doing a great job. So with respect to bringing her up, you know, right now, I mean, she's making under $20 an hour as a department head. I'm not going to beat it down, but again, the net benefit to the city of having a skilled person in that role can far surpass what little bit of money we give her in a raise to keep her around. And that's my point.
I'll call for the question then. All those in favor of the amendment to remove $6,300 from the HR salary line item and transfer it over to the street department, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. Fails 2-5. That brings us back to the original budget. Is there any further discussion on the budget as presented?
I'm done. I think it's pretty obvious where we're at here, so no sense in going any farther with it as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, any further discussion? Then I'll call for the question. All those in favor of the resolution approving the 2020-2021 general fund and coal severance budgets submission to the West Virginia State Auditor's Office, be it resolved by the Common Council of the City of Vienna that the general fund and coal severance budgets, copies of which are attached hereto for fiscal year 2020-2021, are hereby approved. The Treasurer of the City of Vienna is hereby authorized and directed to forward same to the West Virginia State Auditor's Office for approval. Am I correct, Amy? Correct. Thank you very much. All right. All those in favor of the resolution approving the budgets for 2020-2021, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. Motion approving the budgets is approved 5-2. That concludes our agenda this evening. I guess we move.
Don't know if you can do that tonight or not, Mayor, but a quick update if you can, and if not, maybe next time, on streetscape. There was an article in the paper here 2 or 3 weeks back that to me was extremely misleading unless things have changed and are different than the way I understand it. Has something changed there, or was that article misleading?
Excuse me. Well, I get it back for review as far as removing the kickouts, which all of the businesses on Grand Central Avenue objected to. So that's where we are. We're still waiting for the word from the Department of Highways on the revisions that were made. So
Well, the newspaper article basically said we had a grant to go forward.
we have 2 grants.
And the 2 grants that we have was turned into a grant, if I'm correct.
That is correct.
And the grants are strictly for design. They have nothing to do with the project going forward. Once the designs are approved, then we have to apply for a grant to actually do the work. Those can only be applied for November through January, so we've already missed that. So we're 2 years down the road. But the newspaper article basically alluded to the fact that we have grants to do the project, which is not true.
You know, it's interesting when you deal with state government, you have to be prepared to be in for the long haul. None of these projects happen very quickly. And so part of the money that we did receive as a grant was for the design phase. Part of that money that we originally got was not for the design phase. Now, when they combine the two of them, and now that it's gone back for revision, we will get final numbers that we will have to decide what we want to do. But our share of that is a very small portion. And so once we get those numbers from the state on the revision, then I will share those numbers with you. But as I said, when you deal with the federal government or the state government, it is a slow process. And so we're still in the system. Our grants are still active. It's just a matter of getting back through the process.
Well, there again, and maybe we need to get Tony to come in at some point in time, but when we're talking about those grants, you stated that part of it was for design, but part of it was for the project. The last conversation that I had with Burgess and Nyepel was that because of the scope of the project, that there was probably not even enough money in the grant to cover the design work, and we'd probably have to go back for additional grant money just to do the design.
I can't
So
speak to,
we're
I
not
can't.
on the same page.
Well, but I can't speak to your conversations with Burgess and Nyepel. I just know that my conversations with the actual state of West Virginia, whereas I explained to you that they've taken it back for reevaluation on the design phase, removing the kickouts. Okay? Any other council comments this evening? Amy, as always, I thank you very much for all of your hard work. I know we've went back and forth. You do a fantastic job for us, and I appreciate all the work that Mark Schwindeman has done. He has a great staff. We will revisit that and find out, where we want to go. He gave us a lot of options to think about. With that, I hope and pray that all of your family members are safe and that all of your friends are safe, and that we all take extra care and make sure that the social distancing and the cleanliness and all the disinfection is being done diligently. If you get an opportunity to help someone that's a senior citizen, please volunteer to take them some food or do whatever you have to keep them safe, because we need to keep them out of the at-risk area. So with that, meeting adjourned. Kathy, I don't know what all this you want.
I will need.
You guys watch my social distancing.
Yeah. That's all of that. The rest of this stuff, I think everybody has a copy of it, so. Let me sign that resolution, and then if you would give it to Sean so she can put it in with the census stuff. Hey, Amy, do you know how to turn the live stream off? There's a sheet right there.
But I think tomorrow we're going to
Look down at the bottom.
All right, okay, thank you.